And we're live. What is going on, everyone? I am here joined today by a good friend and a masterful content creator, a truth speaker. It's you guys already know, but it's Liza. But super happy to have you here. Excited to talk more about some updates on your life, and also, I mean, we already kind of chatted about it, but I think a lot of people will be inspired by your story. She's doing some awesome stuff, and especially any females out there who are trying to take over the world. I'm sure you're going to inspire them. So, yeah, I mean, quick introduction. Yeah, take it away. Tell us what you're up to. Maybe start with your background, then tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. I appreciate that very warm welcome. Yeah, my name is Liza. I am a sovereignty educator online. If that sounds like something you've never heard of or you completely don't understand, I get it. It's kind of a newer concept, but essentially, what I educate on, I'm kind of branching out more. I was focusing more on kind of like the legal system, businesses, and just all of the ways that essentially our privacy is being violated and trying to gain some of that privacy back. So that is what I built my platform on, and now I'm kind of branching out to even more of looking at different ways of creating more privacy for ourselves. So I just recently had an unassisted home birth. I just gave birth to my first child. And, going through anyone who's had children and has gone through like a hospital setting, especially women, have, the experience of kind of like trauma in their birth, essentially, and not of any fault of their own, but just the way that the system is set up. It's not set up to optimize, our choices as parents and, the woman's choices. And that's just kind of how it is. And we see that across a lot of different areas of our lives, right? Like there's so many things that we don't have full control and privacy over. So that is what I create content about. And so I am super excited to, continue to use ossa.ai as I branch out into kind of new ways of looking at sovereignty, promoting sovereignty, and sovereignty from depending on these systems that we essentially should have a choice to utilize if we want, right? But not have to just depend on as a default, whether that's like the medical industrial complex or it's, like your credit scores, things like that, where, we don't quite have a choice. So just getting more power back that way. So that is what I create content about. I have, a course that I kind of launched in tandem with when my content was doing super well on TikTok, which is where my content really blew up. I have since been banned off of TikTok because they hate the truth. But yeah, so that is kind of what I do, and that's what I've been up to recently is mostly thinking about, kind of the direction that I want to take the brand in, because I was very honed in on, my brand, my business, just being around the very like technical aspects, looking at more like it's difficult to explain without really getting into the nitty gritty, but essentially all you need to know is I'm just kind of looking at a more broader approach of, sovereignty in different areas of our lives. And mostly just focusing on like how to balance motherhood, with business. So that's what I'm up to right now.
Incredible story. And if you guys haven't heard the extended story, we have another live stream from a couple months ago where she tells a lot more, and there's a lot of intricacies and just awesome parts of your story. So super happy to have you here. Thanks for the awesome introduction. And yeah, just kind of kicking it right off. I know that there was a point in your journey, right? Because a lot of people here, there's probably some people listening, just general content creators or people who want to create content. And there's also people that are interested in faceless content or just AI in general. So the first question I have to ask is, obviously you've, mastered personal brand content creation. For context, anyone listening. So Liza and I originally connected back on Discord in like March, and we were both on this call. It was another big creator that invited us in. So she was a guest speaker, I was a guest speaker, and I talked about OSSA then, and then she kind of reached out, or maybe I think you reached out, or we said, let's connect. And she's like, yeah, this sounds really cool. and she just ended up using the product. And she was the first person to actually have a video go viral on TikTok. It did, I don't know, like 300 or 400K, and that was back in March. And it was like, that was like, I don't even know. That was awesome for me. It was awesome for the whole team. I remember we were like sharing it all around. It was incredible. But the question I really have for you is like, at what point did you start creating faceless content, or even before that, why did you start using AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about faceless content specifically. Faceless content is such an incredible tool for content creators. I think actually super underutilized as well. Because I think, especially like Cole, I know you've been, in the social media game for a while, so you've seen the different trends
Mhm.
as they've come up. Like we saw, I mean, obviously there was just like personal brands, and then we started seeing, micro influencers and people starting to do like UGC content. And I think with TikTok, that's where, not that faceless content didn't exist before, like we had that, with YouTube, but TikTok is what really made it like big. Especially when we look at things like where I started with faceless content and it doing really well, and me realizing that there's a lot to faceless content that you can capitalize on. Like you can get a lot of views and you can start to build a platform on faceless content and then have more freedom in where you want to take it. Like you can start turning it into a brand and kind of insert yourself in, or have a mix, right? Which is what I do.
Mhm.
But when I initially started, what I was doing, the faceless content that I was creating was meme videos. So I would go on CapCut, and everybody's seen these, it's like there's a clip from like a movie or like some kind of like meme video, and you just put text over it to give like context for what
Yeah.
it is, right? So it might be like a scene of like Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, and he's like saying something funny, and then you just give like a caption that's relatable, and you try
Yeah.
to tap into a specific niche. So right around the time before Cole and I met, I started creating these meme videos last year. I want to say around like October is when I started doing it. And that was the first time in my content creation journey. I shouldn't say the first time, but it was the first time where I was consistently getting really high numbers. Like I was getting, like my videos were actually blowing up. I was getting like hundreds of thousands of views. I was like, man, there's really something to this, And sometimes they would completely flop. But
Yeah.
the thing with those little meme videos is that you can make, like, I could make like 15 of them in an hour, and then, it didn't really matter if like 10 of them flopped, if like one of them did really well. So that was when I started learning about the value of faceless content. And then whenever, I had met you and you chatted about, on that live stream talking about what you were doing, in my head, because I was already seeing so much success with the meme videos that I was making, I immediately was thinking, this is going to be huge. I mean, even just before this live stream, I was like, I told you, I was like, you're gonna be like, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos level, known because of the industry that you chose to be in. And I mean that wholeheartedly, and so, yeah, it's like, it's AI first is, like we're really getting in on it
Mhm.
so early. Like people don't realize, if you start utilizing these tools for your content, how early you're getting in on it now, and how much opportunity there is to build a platform. But it's also, you have to realize that it's coming from, faceless content is coming from like a history of there being faceless content. Like there's been a success
Yeah.
in the category of faceless content for so long. It's just that now it's popular with
Mhm.
AI, because before it was like we had YouTube and there were people who created, different kinds of faceless content, like
Yeah, absolutely.
essay videos and things like that. And now, with like platforms like TikTok, I won't say exclusively TikTok, but platforms like TikTok have have really popularized it, right? And so, yeah, that was where my journey started, was the little meme videos. And then, when I hopped on OSSA, it was like, man, it just, that's where it took things to the next level, because it made all of this information that maybe, somebody might have a hard time focusing and like understanding what's being presented with just a talking head video. But if it's in a very visually appealing video that has different kinds of images and text tied to it, then somebody might be able to grasp it a little bit better. So for me, the way that I utilize it is essentially being able to present the same concepts that I teach, as an educator, over and over again, but in a new way, in a way that, makes it accessible to different kinds of people and people's preferences for how they consume their content.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a ton to unpack there, but one thing I want to specifically talk about kind of towards the end of what you just shared is the business side, because I think that's something that a lot of people are interested in. And I always get asked this, is like, okay, so we have, how I look at content creation is you have attention. And at the end of the day, if you're getting attention, you're better off than not, right? It's like, that is the problem we're solving as content creators, is how do we get attention, right?
Yeah.
And the question I have for you is, obviously you have a business, right? So maybe you can give a little more context to exactly what that product looks like. And then how do you take something like OSSA or just Faces content in general? What is your strategy to take that attention and then drive it to your business? Because last we talked, it was allowing you to grow your business.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is such a good point to make around attention. I remember a while back hearing this phrase, or like somebody kind of putting this concept in this way that really made me grasp like today's economy and current, and like what is fueling,
Is it
economy.
attention? Is it
It's
attention is the new
attention,
oil?
and it's data. That's the thing, right? It's like attention and data are like the new gold and silver, like
Yes.
that is what you can bank on. And so from a business perspective, as far as like how to monetize that content, um, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of ways to monetize as a content creator. There's so many different ways. I mean, you can, like, for me, for example, how I started monetizing as a creator, was I became a coach. So I, had something that I was coaching on, something that I was very proficient in, and that is actually one of like the lowest, entry, like, barrier to, or however that phrase
Yeah.
goes, like the barrier to entry is like super low on coaching, because all you need is like yourself, and then you just make content around whatever the product or service is, right? But it's not that you're just promoting, that product or service that, nobody wants to be sold.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll put that differently. People want to be sold. They just don't want to know that they're being sold.
Mm.
And I am like I'm
That's
a
good.
very prominent proponent of that, because having been in sales and marketing for so long, I love sales. And so anytime I'm like, buying a car or something, I love making them work for it. I'm like, okay, sell me on it. If they're like doing XYZ, I'll straight up tell them, I'm like, okay, sell me on this, like, tell me why I should get it. Right. Cause I love being sold. And especially when, for me, it's different because I'm in the industry and I love it. But, the standard kind of attitude towards it is people don't want to be sold. They don't realize they're constantly being sold, but, so that's where, I was talking about coaching, right? Like, that's one way. And then obviously you can monetize on the content itself, which can be a little bit harder unless you're like really gaining massive views.
Yeah.
For me, what I did was, creating a course, and then promoting that course at the end of every video, and letting people know, like, hey, here's this information that I'm giving you. I'm explaining these different concepts to you. And if you want to like take actionable steps towards what I'm explaining to you, and you're intrigued by this, then here's what you can do. Right. So it's taking things from just a pulling people in, like reeling them in with interesting content or funny content or whatever it is, however it is that you're pulling people in, right? And what's actually keeping that attention, and then giving them the opportunity to take the extra step, right? Like, because something that you realize down the line as you're in business, especially nowadays, and you're a content creator, whatever it is, you realize that people are not buying whatever it is you're selling, they're buying you,
Mm.
right? And they
Okay.
want to
That's just my camera. I'm still here.
okay, cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you want to, have some level of like people being able to personally connect to you. And I think that is where, because again, what we were talking about is that, the personal brand is like part of, it's just a core part of like a business now, of a successful business. And so I think where AI can come in there very, very well is that, you can create kind of intimacy with the audience without you having to be the one that's doing it and being in front of the camera, right? And having that like, but by working with, when we look at, for example, a specific niche, playing into whatever those specific interests are. So like, for example, whenever I was creating, my meme videos, just like using CapCut, I was honing in on a very specific archetype, right? So like when marketing, you kind of understand like what an archetype is, and it's just a specific kind of person. And the kind of person that I was targeting was a version of myself, which is like people who love to be free of the system, that are like rebels. Maybe they want to like homestead traditional values, like they want a family, they want, to have maybe some farm animals, like this kind of person who is either like desiring that, right? And like doesn't have that, or is in that, space already, already has those things, already has like a little farm and chickens and kids or whatever, right? So that was like the archetype that I was targeting. And the way that you create intimacy with those people, with that audience, right, using something like AI, is by constantly like, you can almost look at it as like you're constantly pushing the button on like the different interests all the time, so that they start to recognize, oh, like, and have this connection where they're like, oh, this person or this account,
Mm-hmm.
right, is just like me, right? Like there's a lot of there's a lot that I have in common. And so it's like you're creating intimacy through faceless content just by targeting like people's values, essentially. I know I'm using a lot of like marketing speak and like sales language, but
No, it's good.
I
No, this is
promise
great.
that it's like it's not as like technical as I'm making it sound.
No, of course. And I think you touched on, there was one point you made throughout that whole thing that I thought was super interesting. I'm trying to remember it, but I mean, I totally agree. I think there's so much value there, and it's using AI, because it's like, yeah, I'm doing personal brand stuff for me, but it's never really been easier to grow a following. Like it
Oh yeah.
really, like there's people that are growing followings with HeyGen using AI clones. There's
Hmm.
people growing followings with OSSA using faceless content, and there's people growing followings just doing personal brand stuff. So it's like there's all these tools, and it's, in my opinion, it's like never been easier. It's never
Yeah.
been easier to copyright and to create really good scripts, right?
Hmm.
There's literally everything. So that's incredible. And then one of the questions I was going to ask was, how do you connect with your viewers without showing your face? But you basically hit that on the head. I guess
Hmm.
another thing I would want to ask is, what surprised you the most about creating faceless content when you first started?
Oh man, what surprised me the most is, well, one, I don't know that I expected it to do as well as it did. Um, not that I'm not like, that's not a diss towards us or anything. It's just like,
Yeah, no, of course.
whenever that first video went viral, it was like, whoa, it's like, that's nuts, getting those numbers. What surprised me the most is how much freedom it gives me. Like, I can be really hands off. For me, mostly because like I have, an assistant who's able to generate content for me, and I just can kind of give her like, okay, this is the topics that we're doing. Here's like the scripts that we're going to use, and then she can go in and generate the videos and stuff. Yeah, for me, it was the ease of it, that I think was really surprising as well. And yeah, and just like gaining a lot of freedom. Like, AI is just, it's unfathomable. So the how incredible this tool is for anyone, a content creator, a business owner, anybody in the online space that wants to create any kind of value, whether that's monetary or because like you're passionate about something and you want to create content around it. Like, it's insane how much you can do with AI and how little you have to put into it to create, something incredible. And so for me, that I think, and when I first got into, when I first hopped on OSSA and was creating the videos, everything all these thoughts that I have about it now of like it being, more accessible and all these different, like, I didn't go into it thinking all of that. Like, I didn't go into it having all these thoughts. It's just what I've observed based on, how popular this content. I mean, it's like consistently these videos do incredible numbers, whether it's TikTok or Instagram. I actually, I want to mention this. My Instagram was like very lackluster when I was just posting videos of myself talking about these different topics that, I talk about. And then when we started incorporating a lot more of the AI videos on the same topics, my Instagram, it just started blowing up. And it was so funny because it happened at the time that my TikTok got banned. So it's like I had over 100,000 followers on TikTok, got banned. And then it was like a few, I don't even know how soon after that, I had, AI videos that I had made through OSSA that started blowing up on Instagram. And then my Instagram started just like blowing up. I think I only had, I don't even know how many followers at that point, maybe like a few thousand. And now we're at like over 12,000, I think. I don't know. I don't keep up with it. But it's just blown up, and it's been such a blessing, because when you lose, a big platform that you have, like TikTok, for example, it's really stressful. Like, you have that as your, and for me, thankfully, I was smart enough and I've been in this game long enough that I created a third space for my community. So that way I could reach my people, even if I did get banned, which, it's like, it's always a possibility talking about the things that I talk about. Because again, they don't like the truth. But yeah, so then Instagram started just blowing up, and it was 100% thanks to the AI content that we were creating. Because around that time, whenever my TikTok got banned, I was, I think, 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks to my due date. Wow. So, or like something around there. It was like a month or 2 weeks, and I just could not be bothered to like stress about it or to even think about it. Like, I think I was bummed about it for like one night, for like an hour. And then we went and like sat in our jacuzzi and just like chilled out. And I was like, okay, whatever, like it'll figure itself out, I was like, that's a problem for tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to deal with this now. I have a baby on the way. So the fact that then the Instagram started picking up steam and just like blowing up, and now I can rely on that to continue growing and getting in front of people, was such a blessing. Yeah.
It's incredible. And I want to kind of dive into that. And I have a couple more questions. in terms of the TikTok stuff, right? I mean, you're really out there, and it's not like you're spreading any type of, I know I don't really like the term misinformation, because who determines what misinformation is? But
Yeah.
it's not like you're out there spreading lies, right? You're just speaking whatever it is, the knowledge that you have that may be considered controversial, right? So where do you see, what role do you see TikTok having in the social media space over the next couple of years? And how do you think AI in general is going to, exacerbate whatever they're going to do? Right. Because I guess what I'm asking is, when we talk about moderation, right, when we talk about content creation, where do you think social media in general is going to end up over the next couple of years? Because AI is obviously not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as far as TikTok goes, I mean, there's like one of two ways that it can go, and it can either like go completely pooped or get better. And it's hard to tell which way it's going to go. I think TikTok, there's a lot of opportunity for them to course correct. I think what I see for them is honestly a lot of like, because of the space, the headspace that I'm in, and the things that I'm always thinking about from like a legal perspective as well. I see a lot of lawsuits coming their way, honestly, because even what happened with me, I had a course. My course was, I had it off of TikTok, thankfully, on my own course platform, but I also had it on TikTok through their series feature. And so when, I don't know how many, I can't remember how many people bought it on TikTok, but it was a very large number of people. I want to say like 30 to 40% of the total student, and I think we have like 1,500 students in the course. A lot of them have thankfully been able to go on just like our, course platform that I have and get access to the course. But the issue is, when my account got banned, they all lost access to the course that they paid for on TikTok. And so that is a massive, massive liability for TikTok, because now all these people who paid for a product are not gaining access to it anymore, right? So it's a massive, massive issue on TikTok side. Thankfully, I do not have the will or energy to like fight them on it right now. I think maybe in the future I definitely can. And I think my mentor might even push me to do that, because he, wants to see justice being brought, and I think it's also important as far as like, the censorship conversation goes. But I think with TikTok, again, yeah, I see a lot of like lawsuits in their future, honestly, just because of those things that they're not thinking about with, the censorship. And they're also notorious for flagging things as misinformation that is absolutely not misinformation. Like I have a creator that I was following who was who's a naturopath, and he would share a lot, and everything he shared was always backed by like research, science. He would show like different things, but it was just controversial, like you said, right? It was like outside of, I will say, the normie way of thinking or seeing things, right? Like if I said, for example, it's actually more dangerous for women to give birth in a hospital than it is at home. That is not that's not what we're taught to believe. We're taught to believe that, it's safer to give birth in a hospital than it is at home. Well, when we actually look at the statistics, there's a higher mortality rate, a maternity mortality rate in hospitals than there is with home births. So that's not accurate at all. But because I'm saying that, and that's not the common perspective that we're just, told to think, then TikTok says, well, this is misinformation, when it's absolutely not. And it's actually backed by research and statistics and science. And so, I think they're headed, it's hard to tell which direction they're going to go in, because really it's like they need to decide and make changes if they want the platform to succeed. Because otherwise, it's just the censorship is insane. And I think more and more creators are getting turned off from TikTok for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of people, I think, are hungry. And especially now, a lot of people are waking up, to the truth. They're seeking that kind of content. They come across it. They want to see more of it. And then, getting their favorite creators kicked off of the platform that they found them on, like that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, So, yeah. And I know several people that they followed someone and they got banned off of TikTok. And now they're like, oh my gosh, like I even had someone tell me, oh, I saw your content like in January, when it was really popping off. And they were like, I saw your content in January. I really wanted to get your course, but I like couldn't afford to get it at the time because I was like homeless and just had this crazy story. And they're like, then I'm finally in a better place now. And I tried to look you up and I couldn't find you on TikTok, but thank God, like I knew what to look up on YouTube. So like I found your podcast on YouTube and like now I'm here. And so they were finally able to get the course and stuff like 9 months later, 10 months or whatever it is. But yeah, it's like that is kind of where my head is at with TikTok. Is there's a lot of legal and like liability issues that they're going to run into if they haven't yet, right? Not even looking at the whole thing of like, what the government was trying to, come against TikTok and stuff. Like this is now we're talking about consumers and, consumer rights as far as that goes. And as far as social media as a whole, my hope, would be that we have more freedom, more platforms, like similar to X, where there's a lot more freedom of expression. I know that like Rumble has been growing in popularity because they're lower on censorship, right? I think that it's still very like early in the game. I think with X, it's like we got lucky in a way that like Elon Musk bought Twitter and then turned into X, and just because of who he is, like because there was already a history with Twitter being Twitter, like there was already this massive platform. So it's like it's not that it was this brand new platform that popped off because of the lack of censorship, or I should say more freedom, right, to express like whatever you're sharing, and having that be more thoughtful as far as censorship goes. But yeah, I would hope that we get more platforms where we're able to have more freedom of expression and ideas being shared, and honestly more like justice for the content creators that pour their hearts and souls into sharing ideas with people that help people, right? I mean, there's so many people that will say TikTok has taught them so much, like so many different things they would have never learned if they weren't on TikTok, right? And then TikTok turns around and bans those same creators, right? So yeah, I mean, I would hope that we would just have more freedom. As far as like just speaking about TikTok specifically, I don't know. I mean, right now, I don't have a very high opinion of them overall.
Yeah.
But that, that's kind of where it's at for me.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing all that. I know that's definitely frustrating. And when kind of to piggyback off of that, right? So I'm also, we're both large creators, and early on when I first started creating content, or not even when I first started, probably a year or two in, I had like my first really viral video. So I had like consistent videos doing like 1 million, 2 million. Then I had a video do like 15 million, and I grew like 400,000 followers overnight. Then they stopped me from posting for some odd reason. I think because I said something that was like offensive for like 2 weeks. So over that like growth period, I grew like another 300,000 followers, but I lost like 700K because they all thought, oh, he like made a video, he popped off, and now he's disappeared. So people started following me and I couldn't do anything. Then about a year and a half ago, I changed up my content a little bit, and I talked about one specific person, a very popular man, probably the world's most popular man and controversial man. And I think some of the stuff he said is okay, but a lot of it is really controversial, and he knows how to get clicks. So I use his name, and I started posting that content. It was kind of in like a podcast setting like this. It was different from my old content, and I posted that video. They obviously took it down. They said like hate speech. And then I ended up posting over the next couple of weeks, and they just started taking all my content down. I talked about Mr. Beast, took it down, strike. I talked about Charlie D'Amelio, took it down, strike. And that was like their way of saying, like, we're going to keep you in check. And I think that is super dangerous because it totally is against what it means to, at least in the US, what it means to be a US citizen, right? It's like, who is the one who is determining what is misinformation, right? It's like, who is the one determining, right? And I get it. Like, I'm not here to like offend people, make people mad. Like, I am sensitive to people's, backgrounds and who they are. But I also don't think that someone should be taken off of a platform because they just share a difference of opinion. It's like, just don't follow them. Don't watch the video, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I've gone through. It's something that I had Kui on last week, Kui Kapu, and he also has been going through the same thing. He creates martial arts content. He made a video about martial arts and like literally just people fighting. And they said it was like violence, right? And it's literally AI. And it's like, at what point do we say like enough is enough?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and there's the other thing that where it gets even more in the weeds is when we look at it from a business perspective, because of what I specialize in and the knowledge that I have. Now you're not only censoring people, which is bad enough, but you're actually starting to, and you're a prime example of this as am I, but whenever you had that period where you could have been capitalizing on that viral moment and then you couldn't post for 2 weeks, now they're actually restricting your ability to make profit in your business, which is an even bigger legal liability. And you could take, like, I could take them to court over that, right? And that would be a very valid stance to take of, they are infringing upon my business's ability to generate revenue. And I have so much evidence against them that I would very easily win that case, right? They can have, they can have the best lawyers in the world, but there's just too much against them. Like there's a lot of witnesses that I could bring forth that could testify on the exact same thing. And we could make a massive change in the way that they censor, and that might actually be something that I take on, just for shits and giggles, because why not?
Loop me in if you do, because I mean, imagine how many people just like us, right? Like me, that it's like, it's a hindrance, right? And what's crazy about all of it, I know we're getting sidetracked, but I feel like this is such an interesting topic that people would enjoy, because we're two large creators and we're talking about something that no one talks about. But what's the craziest thing is that we've literally gotten to a point where it's just like accepted. Like people just know. Like in one of my courses that I give out for free, I literally have a list of words you can't say, because they will quite literally take down your video if you say a specific word. And some of them, right, they're definitely fairly offensive objectively, but some of them as well, they're just names. They're just names of people, right? So it's like, where does that put us, right? So
and that's why I get the big bucks, because this is the stuff that I talk about, right? Is like how much of our power, of us giving away our power, of us giving up our control, giving up our privacy, that can we take until we say enough is enough, right? Like this is not acceptable. We need to be treated fairly, especially being American, living in this country. All of the values that we have, right? It's like it comes down to how much are we actually living these values, and how much are we giving them up to these massive conglomerates that can just kind of walk all over us and just like blur the lines of what it means to live in this country, right, and be an American. So I think it's definitely a fascinating thing to talk about, especially from the perspective of content creators. I mean, there's so many things, even with platforms like YouTube, right, where people get deplatformed and demonetized is another thing. And it's just like, sucks to suck. You just have to accept it. Why should we accept that, right? Like, I mean, if there are laws for, in capitalism, or I shouldn't say capitalism, I'm not using the right words, but if there are laws like in the business world, on monopolies and like these different things, we look at the world of content creation, it is so unregulated. that these massive companies can just do whatever, to creators and get away with it. And it should not be that way, right? Like, it really shouldn't be that they can just step all over us because, like Teddy Roosevelt said, like they have a big stick that they can wave around, right? And we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wholeheartedly agree. We'll have to set up another time to literally just talk about this topic because I'm sure so
Yeah.
many people would love to hear about it. But I guess closing thoughts here. Oh, and then my camera goes again. But closing thoughts here. Where can people learn more from you? Where can they find you? Give yourself a nice big shout out because you've given so much value. So please.
Yeah, for sure. So YouTube is going to be the best place to find me. You can tune into the Holistic Sovereign Show. That's my podcast, which I've been taking a bit of a hiatus from because of being on maternity leave. But yeah, it is going to really be something incredible. My mentor is going to start joining me on the podcast episodes, and he is a treasure trove of knowledge. This guy has been through so many different kinds of court cases. He's, discharged all kinds of debt and helped people do the same things, and, has they've gotten cars, discharged and different things. So he has so much knowledge and experience, more importantly, in the field that I'm in. So I'm really excited to have him hopefully co-host regularly on the podcast. So that's going to be the Holistic Sovereign Show on YouTube. It's also on Rumble if you prefer Rumble. And then Instagram, you can find me on Instagram. I believe my handle on there is lisa.empoweredco. So it's going to be the word empowered co, lisa.empoweredco. And yeah, Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, those are kind of the places that I hang out at. And then from there, if you're interested in the things that I share and you want to, get into my private community, go through the course that I have a couple more courses that I'm going to be working on here soon. So if you want to get in on that, you can check that out. That'll be in like the description of all of the different things, the YouTube and whatever. So that's where to find me.
And I'll make sure to drop, this is on YouTube as well. So I'll make sure to drop links to your stuff below as well once this gets posted. Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Liza. This has been awesome as always. I'm sure we'll have you on again in the next couple months. And yeah, thank you so much. And for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for taking the time. Like I said, this is always recorded. So appreciate everybody stopping in.